to go. Hey friends, Wally here. I've had a few phone calls in the last couple days of either clients or friends or colleagues, or actually a tenant of mine actually today, about their furnace not operating properly. And it's always Murphy's Law when it's 40 freaking degrees below zero and the furnace goes out. So I have 4 quick little tips, kind of fix-it tips that you can actually do yourself. One, with the utilization of this video, but 2, a little tip for you, YouTube is actually the #2 search engine in the world. So I go to YouTube for a lot of little fixes that I have at my rental properties, but I'm going to share a few options that you may have that you can tweak with your furnace to get it up and running until a technician can get out the next day or two, because obviously they're very busy these days. So first things first is swapping out the furnace filter. There's a lot of people actually that don't know that there's filters in a furnace. I know it sounds crazy, but if you grew up with a boiler system and you had radiators, then you're unaware of the filters. Or if you've rented for a long time in apartments, a maintenance person takes care of that for you. It's important that you change a furnace filter and change it every single month. So here's an example of a very, very dirty furnace filter. And what happens is with this, the furnace has to work overtime to draw air through the filter that is this dirty. So here's what a clean filter looks like. Okay, I go through filterbuy.com, and one thing that I do when I put my furnace filter in there is I mark the date that I put it in there. And a good rule of thumb is every time that you pay rent or pay your mortgage is to swap out your furnace filters. So if we can take a look right here, the furnace filter in every furnace is in a little bit different location, but once you know which direction that the air is going, make sure you mark it on here, because there is a direction to a furnace filter. So that's the first tip. The next 2 or 3 tips here that I'm going to show you, we're going to actually open up the furnace here. It's been running hot all day, so I'm not going to alter anything in here, but there's a light switch on the side of a furnace that all you have to do is switch it down and it's going to turn it off. So the 3 basic fixes that you can get your furnace up and running is 1, the igniter. So there's 1 screw and 1 plug on the igniter. So if you hear your furnace firing up but there's no ticking sound, so like on a gas range, if there's no ticking sound and the flame doesn't fire up, it's the igniter. Something like this is going to cost you around $15. If you call somebody out, $85 trip charge, or minimum $100. The second thing here, if we can bring the camera down a little bit closer, is if you take a look on the left side of the flame, there's a little stick, and that's a flame sensor. So if your furnace fires up, you can see the flame, and then it shuts off. That means your flame sensor is either corroded or it needs to be replaced. Now, typically it's just corroded. There's 1 screw on there. You unscrew it, pull it out, obviously make sure that it's not hot, and then you use a little bit of fine grit sandpaper to remove the corrosion that's on the flame sensor, put it back in. And that was actually the issue that I had with one of my tenants' furnaces today. The flame sensor was corroded. I put the sandpaper on it, put it back in, flipped the switch back on, furnace fired up, and replace the furnace filter as well, and it's good to go. The third one, a little bit more, or fourth part as far as replacement, is potentially the blower motor. Blower motor is somewhere between $75 and $150 to do it yourself. It's a little bit more involved, but if your furnace fires up but it's not circulating air through the house, then it's your blower motor. So a quick recap. We got furnace filter, the easiest one. That's cheap maintenance, as my dad would say. 2, we have the igniter, so what sparks the flame. And then 3 is the flame sensor, and 4 is the blower motor. Beyond that, that's a call to a specialist. If you have any questions about any of this, I'm going to have some links to some YouTube videos in the comments. Plus, if you're having issues with your furnace, you need something in an emergency fashion, let me know. I have about a half a dozen furnace and HVAC technicians that can come out. Obviously, it's very expensive, at this time of the night, and when it's this cold, it's in really high demand. But just some quick tips, because I had a lot of phone calls over the course of the last couple days, and actually had to deal with one of them myself, of ways that you can get your furnace up and running until you can get a technician out in the next day or two. So any questions, put it in the comments, and cheers friends. We'll stay warm.